Hello, my name is Benjamin Hart. I'm an American attorney and the Managing Director of Integrity Legal here in Bangkok, Thailand. This video is another one of our sort of periodic updates based on sort of news, anecdotal things that have happened with respect to Thai immigration and visas. It's recently come to my attention with respect to overstay. Thai immigration authorities are becoming really stringent on the issue of overstay. The overall sort of scheme of overstaying and blacklisting, which is now in effect in Thailand, is mentioned in detail in another video on this channel. I suggest you go to that one, specifically the one about blacklisting with respect to overstay. Just very briefly, it should be noted that those who overstay in Thailand, overstay their visa in Thailand, be that a 30-day stamp upon entry into Thailand or a 15-day stamp depending on circumstances, or an actual visa, tourist visa, business visa, education visa, whatever. If one goes into overstay, if one overstays by 90 days, there's an automatic blacklisting of that individual. That came into effect a couple of years ago as of the time of this video, and it has not really, it's still in effect. Blacklisting with respect to overstay can be a rather significant issue. So the reason I bring it up in this video is there are folks who, and this is kind of always what happens when rule changes happen, the sort of, I don't know how you put it, the people kind of figure out how to deal with the rules. And one of the recent things that's come up anecdotally, I've had not just one, but a few people tell me that, hey, I didn't overstay the 90 days, but I had, in some cases, multiple overstays over maybe the past year and a half that were just for a couple of days. And this is actually fairly frequent. It's not uncommon that you'll see people, I was, I left 2 days after my visa technically expired, I paid the overstay fine. Now at the airport, you're going to pay 500 baht per day as of the time of this recording, 500 baht per day for each day that one overstays. Now that amount maxes out at 20,000 baht. But it should be noted that there is this gray area between, overstay day 1 and overstay day 90, where 90 is pretty clearly defined in the new regulations that at 90 days one is blacklisted. But what is one in between 1 and 90 days? Well, let me put it this way. Rather than looking at the regulations, let's look at the hard and fast overall situation. And the hard and fast overall situation is Thai immigration authorities always have absolutely discretionary authority with respect to the admission of foreign nationals into Thailand, whether those nationals are visaed or not visaed, okay? And understand, these are really broad powers that immigration authorities have, as has been recently evidenced in the sort of so-called Trump executive order with respect to U.S. immigration, the so-called travel ban. Immigration powers are quite sweeping. It's just a fact. Every country, it's part of each country's sort of plenary sovereign powers, is that they have delegated those powers to folks in their immigration apparatus to go ahead and make determinations as to the suitability of admitting individuals into their country. So the first thing to keep in mind is the rules, as it were, are guidelines for the immigration officers. If they see somebody coming in that they view as clearly an undesirable, for lack of a better term, they can turn that individual away. It doesn't care what the so-called rules say. So it's been my experience. I've actually had 2 folks contact me, well, actually more than that, contact me over the course of about the last 6 months, just mentioning, a couple I can think of off the top of my head who mentioned, yeah, look, I came through immigration and I had some of these previous overstays. They were a couple of days. It wasn't over 90 days, but they were overstays. And, I got really hassled at immigration. They said, well, we might not let you in next time. Don't do it anymore. Another couple of individuals, actually I've spoken to, have been told they were turned away for readmission because they overstayed multiple different times, but at each instance was less than 90 days. So the reason I'm bringing all of this up is it's looking to me like the overall regime, the overall attitude, if you will, of the immigration apparatus in Thailand is one of, look, we're going to strictly enforce the notion of overstaying. And no longer are we going to just sort of allow it as a matter of course. it's going to be pointed out. An individual may be detained while the matter is sort of, a decision is made as to how to resolve the issue. And it's looking like more and more there may be instances where folks are going to be turned away by immigration. That looks to me like it's not an impossibility moving forward. People should be aware of this and understand that overstaying, although technically between day 1 and day 90, there's not any hard and fast regulation out there stipulating to a blacklisting, you know, multiple instances of a sort of a clear pattern of overstay that's sort of consciously operating in this gray area could lead to adverse decision by a later immigration officer on whether or not to admit that person another time around. So one should be very aware before traveling to Thailand that simply trying to sort of thread the needle, as it were, as far as the actual posted rules go, it's probably not a wise strategy. The best strategy is to constantly maintain legal presence in the Kingdom of Thailand rather than overstaying. Some overstays are unavoidable. You know, planes get delayed, things happen. And it's been my experience that immigration officers here are actually fairly amenable to extenuating circumstances. But again, where one shows a clear pattern of having sort of walked between the raindrops, as it were, you know, a later immigration officer might not feel that that's particularly conducive to a later admission. It should also be noted that in the United States, you know, overstaying of any kind can result in a ban from being able to come back in for fairly prolonged periods of time. So, you know, Thailand isn't outside the norm in these overarching policies. It's just perhaps their unique way of actually enforcing these policies is a little different here in Thailand. But one should be aware, you know, sort of the era of, as I said, just trying to walk between the raindrops or stay in this gray area and trying to, you know, just sort of coast through. That's really at an end, and it's really, really advisable that anybody coming here assiduously maintain their lawful status.